Par Commander Vex of the Kryllian Frost Warriors had conquered 17 ice worlds in his illustrious career, 17 frozen hellscapes where lesser species had cowered before the might of Kryllian environmental supremacy. Today was supposed to be number 18. "Sir, the storm systems are reading beyond our equipment parameters," Lieutenant Zara reported, her mandibles clicking nervously as she checked her readings for the 5th time in 10 minutes. "Impossible," Vex snarled, his blue-scaled face barely visible through the frost building up on his helmet display. "Kryllian technology adapts to any frozen environment. We are the masters of ice warfare." Sergeant Grimm, a scarred veteran of 12 campaigns, wasn't so sure. He'd been watching the temperature readings drop past levels that should have been survivable with their gear. "Commander, perhaps we should consider tactical withdrawal until—" "We do not withdraw," Vex cut him off. "The Frost Warriors have never retreated from cold. It would be like humans retreating from whatever pathetic thing humans are good at." That's when the blizzard hit them like a freight train made of frozen razors. Within minutes, their state-of-the-art environmental suits were struggling. The heating elements couldn't keep up with the temperature drop, and ice was forming on the inside of their visors. Zara's equipment readings had gone from beyond parameters to frankly insulting to the concept of survival. "Sir," she gasped, her breath creating dangerous condensation in her helmet, "my suit telemetry indicates we have perhaps 30 minutes before hypothermia becomes problematic." Grimm was already showing signs of cold shock, his usually steady aim now resembling someone trying to thread a needle during an earthquake. "Commander, I hate to say it, but—" "Look," Vex interrupted, pointing through the swirling snow with a trembling arm. "There's something out there." Through the whiteout conditions, they could make out a figure moving with impossible casualness through the storm. Not fighting it, not struggling against it, just walking. Like someone taking a pleasant stroll through a particularly aggressive snowfall. "Is that—" Zara squinted through her frosted visor, "is that figure setting up some kind of shelter?" Indeed, the mysterious being appeared to be unpacking equipment with the methodical patience of someone who had all the time in the world. Which, given the weather conditions, they decidedly did not. "Survivor from a crashed ship," Grimm suggested hopefully. "Or bait," Vex replied with military paranoia. But as another gust of wind nearly knocked him off his feet, his pride began wrestling with his rapidly freezing survival instincts. 25 minutes later, pride lost. Section 2. Enter the human. "Well, hey there, folks. Looks like you're having a bit of weather trouble." The voice belonged to a human male, approximately average height, wearing what appeared to be casual outdoor gear that had no business keeping anyone alive in these conditions. He was humming something cheerful while methodically setting up what looked like camping equipment. "You," Vex managed through chattering mandibles, "you are human?" "Guilty as charged." "Jack Morrison, planetary surveyor." The human extended a gloved hand in greeting, which the 3 Kryllians stared at with the confusion of beings who had never encountered casual friendliness during a tactical situation. "Though I gotta say, you folks picked a real doozy of a day for sightseeing." Lieutenant Zara checked her instruments again. "Sir, his thermal signature indicates he's comfortable." "Comfortable?" Vex couldn't hide his disbelief. The ambient temperature is 40 degrees below the survivable threshold for most carbon-based life forms. "Oh, this old thing." Jack gestured casually at the howling blizzard. "Yeah, it gets a bit nippy. Nothing a good campfire won't fix. You guys want some cocoa while I get set up? You look half frozen." The Kryllian Frost Warriors, elite soldiers trained to conquer ice worlds, exchanged glances that conveyed a single shared thought. What in the frozen hells was happening here? "You're offering us beverages?" Vex asked slowly. "Well, sure. Can't have folks dying of exposure on my watch. Bad for the neighborhood reputation." Jack had somehow produced a thermos from his pack and was pouring steaming liquid into metal cups. "Fair warning, though, I made it with earth chocolate, so it might be a bit rich for your systems. Got some milder stuff if you prefer. Grim, whose suit heating had given up entirely, accepted a cup with hands that barely worked. The warmth hit his system like a revelation. This is actually helping. Course it is. Proper hydration and internal warming, basic survival 101. Jack continued setting up his camp with infuriating competence. You folks are Kryllian, right? Frost Warriors unit, if I'm reading those insignia correctly. Why all are famous for the Ice World campaigns. You know of our military campaigns. Vex accepted his own cup, too cold to maintain proper interrogation protocols. Oh sure, required reading in human military academies. Great case studies in environmental adaptation warfare. Though I gotta say, your intel on this particular rock seems a bit optimistic. Jack had somehow gotten a fire going using materials that definitely hadn't been in his pack 5 minutes ago. The flames burned steady and warm despite the screaming wind, defying several laws of physics that Zara had thought were non-negotiable. How are you doing this? She asked, gesturing at the impossible campfire. Doing what? Making fire? Pretty sure that's been figured out for a few million years now. Jack grinned and started unpacking more equipment, though I'll grant you, doing it properly takes some practice. Most folks try to fight the environment instead of working with it. Commander Vex, warming up enough to remember he was supposed to be conducting a military operation, attempted to reassert control. Human, you will explain your presence on this strategic world and… Oh, I'll be happy to explain over tea. Should have the kettle going in just a minute. Hope you folks like Earl Grey. Section 3. Campfire Diplomacy. 20 minutes later, 3 elite alien warriors sat around a crackling campfire, holding delicate china teacups, wondering how their invasion had turned into a tea party. Now then, Jack said, settling into a camp chair that had definitely not existed earlier, you were asking about strategic value. This little ice ball's got some interesting mineral deposits, but nothing worth fighting over. Of course, that's just my opinion. Vex tried to maintain military composure while sipping what was frankly the best tea he'd ever tasted. Our intelligence indicates significant tactical advantages to controlling this system. Oh, your intelligence is spot on. Great tactical advantages. Question is, tactical advantages for what? Jack poured himself a cup with the casual precision of someone performing a familiar ritual. See, depends on what your strategic goals are, doesn't it? Lieutenant Zara found herself actually relaxing for the first time since planetfall. Our strategic goals are classified. Of course they are. Military secrets and all. Though between you and me, the orbital bombardment positioning you've got set up suggests you're planning to crack the ice shelf on the northern continent. Smart thinking, really. Drop the temperature another 50 degrees. Make the whole planet uninhabitable for warm-blooded species. The 3 Kryllians went very still. Now that's curious, Grim said carefully. How would a planetary surveyor know about orbital positioning? Same way I know that Lieutenant Zara here graduated top of her class from the Kryllian Military Academy 3 cycles ago. Or that Sergeant Grim has a commendation for valor from the Arcturus campaign. Or that Commander Vex's mate just laid her 3rd clutch of eggs last month. The silence stretched long enough to roast marshmallows over. Congratulations on that, by the way, Jack continued conversationally. Triplets are rare in your species, right? Must be exciting. Vex's hand moved slowly toward his sidearm. Your intelligence operative. Nah, just friendly. Also observant. And maybe I've done my homework. Jack refilled their cups without being asked. Question is, what are you folks really doing way out here? Because between you and me, this seems like an awful lot of firepower for a routine ice world conquest. The fire crackled pleasantly while 3 trained warriors tried to figure out how they'd become the ones being interrogated. The Kryllian Dominion seeks to expand territorial control, Vex said stiffly. Sure, standard expansion protocol. Though usually you folks go for the easy targets first. This little rock's got some nasty weather patterns, unstable geology, and frankly limited strategic value. Unless. Jack paused thoughtfully. Unless you're not here to conquer it. You're here to practice on it. Zara's mandibles clicked involuntarily. Training exercise, Jack continued, warming to his theme. New unit, maybe? First command for the good commander here? Use a worthless ice ball to shake down procedures before the real campaign. The fact that he was completely correct was somehow more disturbing than if he'd been wrong. How could you possibly? Vex began. Know that? Well, first clue was the orbital formation. Too spread out for bombardment, perfect for observation and evaluation. Second clue was your equipment load. You're carrying training monitors and assessment gear along with standard combat kit. Third clue. Jack grinned. Third clue is that if this was a real operation, you wouldn't have sent the Frost Warriors. You'd have sent the regular army. Section 4. Tactical Tea Time. The Frost Warriors are elite troops, Commander Vex protested, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Oh, absolutely. Elite troops who are way too valuable to waste on a routine ice world that any second-tier unit could handle with minimal casualties. Jack was now producing cookies from somewhere, because apparently his camping supplies included a full catering service. Which means this isn't routine and it's not about the ice world. Sergeant Grimm, who'd been quiet for several minutes, finally spoke up. You're suggesting this is about us? Bingo. This is an evaluation. Someone up the chain wants to see how the famous Frost Warriors handle unexpected complications. How you adapt when your standard environmental advantages don't work. How you problem solve under pressure. Lieutenant Zara nearly choked on her tea. That's classified information. Honey, at this point, what isn't? Jack offered the cookies around. Chocolate chip, by the way. Made them this morning. The fact that they were excellent cookies somehow made everything worse. So let me paint you a picture, Jack continued. High Command decides the Frost Warriors have gotten too comfortable with their reputation, too reliant on environmental superiority. They cook up a scenario where your usual advantages are neutralized, throw you into conditions that'll really test your adaptability. And then they put you here, Vex said slowly, pieces falling into place. Well, someone's got to observe the test. Make sure nobody actually dies from exposure when the whole exercise goes sideways. Jack's casual tone didn't quite hide a harder edge, because it was always going to go sideways. Weather systems like this don't develop naturally. Someone's been seeding the atmosphere. The implications hit them like a second blizzard. High Command set us up to fail, Grimm said flatly. Not to fail, to struggle, to learn, to prove you're more than just environmental specialists. Jack refilled the kettle with practiced ease. Question is, what are you going to do about it? We complete the mission, Vex said automatically. Which mission? The fake invasion of a worthless rock, or the real mission of proving you can adapt and overcome when someone stacks the deck against you? The fire popped and crackled while three warriors reconsidered everything they thought they knew about their current situation. You're suggesting we abandon our orders, Zara said carefully. I'm suggesting you complete your actual orders, which, if I'm reading this situation correctly, are to demonstrate that the Frost Warriors can handle anything the galaxy throws at them. Even when that anything includes impossible weather, equipment failure, and… Jack grinned. Random human planetary surveyors with questionable camping habits. And if you're wrong about our orders? Vex asked. Then you court-martial me for interfering with military operations. But you'll do it while warm, properly fed, and with a much better understanding of how human intelligence networks operate. The three Kryllians looked at each other, then at the human who'd somehow turned their military exercise into an impromptu philosophy seminar. What exactly are you proposing? Vex asked. Section 5. The Human Doctrine. See, this is where human military thinking gets interesting, Jack said, settling back in his chair like a professor beginning a favorite lecture. Most species, when they hit a problem, they try to overpower it. Kryllians use environmental advantages. Zentari use overwhelming firepower. Thexians use superior technology. Effective strategies, Vex pointed out. Oh, absolutely. Right up until you run into a problem that can't be overpowered. Jack gestured at the still raging blizzard around their impossibly cozy campfire. Then what? What? You adapt your approach, Zara said slowly. Exactly. But here's the thing about adaptation. It works better when you're not dying of exposure while you figure it out. Jack pulled out what appeared to be a tablet and began showing them readouts. See, while you folks were planning your traditional ice world assault, humans were asking a different question. Which was? Why fight in terrible conditions when you can make the conditions not terrible? The tablet displayed thermal imaging of the area. Instead of the uniform frozen wasteland they'd expected, it showed a network of warm zones, underground installations, and what looked suspiciously like infrastructure. You've been terraforming, Grim realized. Not terraforming exactly. More like selective environmental modification. Heating stations, atmospheric processors, weather dampeners. Nothing that shows up on standard military reconnaissance, but enough to make extended operations comfortable rather than survival exercises. Vex studied the displays with growing amazement. The entire northern continent has been modified. Took about 6 months. Most of it's automated now. Point is, we didn't come here to conquer this ice ball. We came here to make it livable. Then, if anybody else wants to conquer it, they're welcome to try. Though they'll find the strategic value has changed somewhat. You're not warriors, Zara said with dawning understanding. You're builders. Oh, we're warriors when we need to be. But we're builders first. See, conquest is temporary. You take a world, you hold it. Eventually someone takes it from you. But if you make a world better, if you turn a frozen hellscape into somewhere people actually want to live. Jack shrugged. Well, then conquest becomes kind of beside the point. The implications were staggering. You're suggesting that human military doctrine is based on making enemies irrelevant rather than defeating them. I'm suggesting that the best victory is the one where nobody has to die, everyone gets what they actually need, and everybody goes home happy. Though I'll grant you it takes longer and requires more creativity than the traditional blow things up until they surrender approach. Sergeant Grimm was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. These installations could support how many troops? Currently, about 12,000 with room for expansion. But here's the kicker, they're designed to support any carbon-based life form. Kryllian, human, Zentari, whatever. Universal life support protocols. You built a base that could house enemy forces, Vex said slowly. I built a base that could house anyone who needed housing. Whether they're enemies or not kind of depends on what they decide to do next. The fire crackled quietly while 3 elite warriors processed the idea that their entire approach to military operations might be fundamentally flawed. So what happens now? Zara asked. Well, that depends on what you folks want to happen. You can complete your original mission parameters, try to conquer a planet that's already more comfortable than most inhabited worlds, and report back that the Frost Warriors successfully took an ice world that wasn't really frozen anymore. Jack refilled their cups again. Or you can report back that you encountered a completely new form of military strategy and would like to learn more about it. And if we choose the second option, then I introduce you to some colleagues who've been dying to compare notes on environmental warfare with actual experts. Because honestly, watching you folks work in real ice conditions has been educational as hell. Commander Vex found himself facing the strangest decision of his military career, continue following orders that had been designed to test him, or admit that the test had revealed something he'd never expected to learn. Section 6. New Alliances over Earl Grey. 6 months later, former Commander Vex, now Colonel Vex, Human Coalition Forces, was reviewing reports from the newest integrated unit in the galaxy. The Kryllian Human Environmental Operations Division had just completed their third successful joint mission, turning what should have been a brutal winter siege into a collaborative infrastructure project. Sir Lieutenant Zara called from her new post as Cultural Integration Specialist. We're getting requests from 17 different species wanting to join the Environmental Ops program. 17? Vex looked up from his paperwork. Last week it was 12. Word gets around fast when you stop losing troops to preventable exposure deaths, Sergeant Grimm observed. He was currently training a mixed unit of Zentari shock troops and human engineers in something called battlefield hospitality protocols. The irony wasn't lost on any of them that the Kryllian Frost Warriors, once feared across the galaxy for their mastery of ice warfare, were now running the most popular cross-training program in Coalition military history. Turns out, species that had spent millennia trying to kill each other were remarkably eager to learn better ways of not dying in hostile environments. "Colonel," Jack's voice came over the comm system, "we've got incoming traffic from the Thexian Empire. Apparently their high command wants to discuss a formal alliance." The Thexians? Vex couldn't hide his surprise. They'd been isolationist for centuries. Yeah, well, apparently when you stop treating first contact as a military engagement and start treating it as a dinner party, people get more social. Jack appeared in the doorway carrying, predictably, a tea service. Besides, turns out they make excellent engineers. Who knew? The transformation had been remarkable, though Vex still couldn't quite believe how it had started. What should have been a routine military exercise had turned into a complete philosophical overhaul, all because one human had decided that freezing soldiers needed tea more than they needed interrogation. "Sir," Zara interrupted his thoughts, "I've been reviewing the latest recruitment numbers. Do you realize we've prevented more military casualties in the past 6 months than most peace treaties manage in decades?" By teaching people how to make proper camps and share meals, Grimm added with wonder. Who would have thought that the most effective military strategy was just being decent to people? "Jack did," Vex replied simply. Speaking of which, Jack settled into his usual chair with practiced ease. I should probably mention something I forgot to bring up earlier. The three Kryllians exchanged glances. Jack's casual revelations had become legendary and rarely pleasant surprises. "Before I became a planetary surveyor," Jack continued conversationally, "I was a kindergarten teacher back on Earth. 23 years of managing small humans with boundless energy and questionable decision-making skills." The silence stretched long enough to steep a fresh pot. "You're telling us," Vex said slowly, "that you revolutionized interspecies military cooperation using techniques you learned from 5-year-olds? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds weird." Jack poured tea with his usual precision. "But think about it. Kids fight when they're hungry, cold, scared, or bored. Feed them, keep them warm, make them feel safe, give them something interesting to do, and suddenly cooperation becomes possible. You've been treating military conflicts like classroom management," Zara realized. "And it's been working beautifully. Turns out most interspecies warfare is just grown-ups having tantrums because their basic needs aren't being met." Jack offered cookies around the group. "Address the needs, reduce the tantrums." Grimm shook his head in amazement. "We've been outsmarted by elementary education theory." "Not outsmarted," Jack corrected gently. "Outcared. There's a difference." Later, as Vex filed his daily report to Coalition Command, he reflected on how completely his understanding of military service had changed. They were still warriors, still prepared to fight when necessary. But they'd discovered that making fighting unnecessary was often more effective than being good at it. The Kryllian frost warriors had set out to conquer an ice world and instead had learned the most dangerous human weapon of all, the terrifying effectiveness of radical kindness backed by proper logistics. And honestly, the tea really was excellent.